from Olivia's piece for us.
Beautiful.
Hello, everyone.
Hi,
Thanks, Andre.
Hi, Andre.
Cool.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our second open play reading in collaboration with the wonderful Writers Lab and TX Theatre. We're very, very excited to be here tonight. We're very excited to share pieces of two brand new scripts with you. Some read live, some pre-recorded. It's a fantastic new project that we're very excited to share. It's all about developing new writers, new writings, and involving audiences in that process. We're very excited to be joined by beautiful people from the Writers Lab, from TX Theatre, and of course, our writers themselves. I'm going to hand straight over to Katlego Chale from the Writers Lab.
Thank you so much, Hayley, for the opportunity to sit in this way, to hold space in this way. Yeah, I think it's been obviously a strange time where we're trying out new things and we're trying to see how we're going to navigate our way into the future. And when you guys at the POPArt said, let's do something, where we can start having some readings online, this presented such a lovely opportunity for us to continue with something that we'd already been working on as the Writers Lab. So I'm just going to give everybody just a brief background about what the lab is about and where we come from and what we aim to do. And then I'm also going to give just a brief background of the TX Theatre before we jump right into the work with the writers. So the Writers Lab as an organization finds its genesis actually on the 4th of November. Actually, what day is it today? It's the 3rd. Shucks. Oh my goodness. So it would be literally tomorrow in 2017, where we had our first official meeting. And really the idea was that, yeah, shout out, man, this is great. I wish we had this thing tomorrow. It would have been perfect. But basically it was about, getting writers together and seeing what people might be working on and creating a space where creatives could come together and focus on, literary and performative work, so that we could assist writers to find the meat of what they were trying to do. Because too often we have these amazing reflections once the work goes to the stage already, and we could have done a lot of developmental work prior to that. And I think that this has kept us from archiving a lot of work that could have been amazing. So the idea was that how do we start incubating concepts so that by the time we get to the script and by the time we get to the stage, we've already been through so many rigorous checks and balances that the work has been critiqued, the work is strong, and the work will hold in front of an audience. So we actually started out with the name The Writers Fraternity. And then through kind of a democratic process, we then decided to drop the idea of the fraternity because of, the undertones of the patriarchy, the undertones of brotherhood, the undertones of, putting us in a particular kind of space. And we wanted to be a space that was actually more representative of the people that were there and more representative of what the space actually represented, right? If you look at a lot of the images that capture what we do as the Writers Lab, you'll see a lot of them is a bunch of people sitting around in a circle with papers in their hands, and this spoke to the idea of a lab, so every time that we would meet, it is like we were entering into a laboratory to see, to test out hypotheses, to see what different methods we could try to bring about, whatever we were trying to bring about into the world. And so about 2 years ago, the Writers Lab came into being, and now we finally have been registered as an NPO. And now we are just excited about, all the amazing things that we would love to do. I'm grateful to the steering committee. It is myself as chairperson and secretary. It's Refilo Lepere as the convener. It's Eddie Taba as the treasurer. It's Ronald Manganya as the deputy chairperson. And it is Mxolisi Masilela as the coordinator. And this team has essentially been what has taken us from being quite stagnant, because when you have a big organization, it's difficult to figure out how you're going to make decisions to move forward. And once we streamlined and we had a steering committee come together, we were able to start putting actual events into motion. And this then led to the Writers Lab Reading Festival, which we had last year, where Jade and Olivia actually came into the space, and they offered their amazing plays. We had this call out and we had a bunch of plays that we had to read through, and eventually we came down to 8 plays by Jade, by Olivia, by Refilwe, by Siseko Velelo, by Kucho Green, by Ronald Manganye, by Shamin Chiba, and by Neosibia. And after that entire reading process, we then had a collaboration with our publishing partner, the Arts Gonacheng, which is run by Monacheng Vice Mutsabi, who has done, some amazing publishing work in terms of archiving the current kind of stream of, plays that have been making waves in and through the country. And so through this collaboration, now we've been able to whittle down the list. It wasn't easy, to 4 plays, and we're going to hear snippets from 2 of those plays today. And as the series continues, we'll see a little bit more from the other writers. So today we're here to hear from Jade and Olivia, and we're so grateful that you guys have made the time to, first of all, be here today, and that you've offered your hearts, opened up your works, and have let us, to wade through them and see what kind of healing is there for us. Before we step into the readings, I'd just like to give a word of thanks also to the TX Theatre. That is the primary independent theatre that's in Tembisa. And this is run by the efforts of Mxolisi Masilela, Mongezi Mapunda, Itumeleng Mwekezi, Itumeleng Tobejane. And they have this amazing team. I'm not naming all of them, but this amazing team who have, for the past, I'm not sure how many years, but I'm sure it's over a decade now, that they've been turning this space that was just a community hall into an actual theatre. And they recently just finished a run of a play called Ruth, and it's their first play back after lockdown, and they did the whole social distancing measures, and all of it is it's unfunded, and so it just speaks to this creative capacity of young independent theatre makers just being adamant about getting the work out there. And so we give so much thanks to the TX Theatre for making space for us, and you'll see that the recorded reading was recorded there. Last week's reading was also recorded there, and the upcoming readings will also be recorded there. So round of applause for the TX Theatre, and with much thanks. Alrighty. So now to get into the business of why we're here today, I would like to introduce everybody to Jade, Bibi, and Olivia Julia Fisher. These are 2 of the 4 writers that will be getting published in the anthology, and we have a broad concept around what the anthology is about, and this is titled cross-stitching, right? Even they're hearing this for the first time. And essentially what this is about, it is the practice of weaving stories together using thread, right? So the idea of using thread as ink that permeates through the page to bring together these seemingly different narratives, but we see that they're connected by many actual undertones that are, seeping through in the work. And I'm sure that we'll see some of these when we hear from them. So I think the first writer that we're going to hear from is Jade Bibi, who's going to introduce her play to us first. Over to you, Jade.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jade. I wrote the play first. It is a play about a couple, Jane and John, and all of their couple first moments. So first kiss, first I love you, first fight, first time, all of the things that everybody goes through in their relationships. but I was interested in this idea that sometimes you leave a conversation and you think to yourself, oh, I wish I said that, or I should have said this. And so what I decided was to put all of the possibilities of conversations into the play. So what happens if Jane says something different? What happens if John says something different? Does that change the outcome of the conversation, of the situation, etc.? I haven't seen the recorded reading, so I'm also excited to see what it looks like. As a writer, I think that's the joy of seeing how other people interpret your words. So I'm excited to watch it along with you guys, and I hope that that little snippet or that little explanation helps it to make sense.
I think that so that we just get to see the work immediately, I think maybe, Emil, we can jump right into the recording for first, and then we'll come back and introduce Olivia before we go into the pieces for still. So Emil, if you will, please give us first.
Bibi. A note. The truth of each of the events listed below are up to the discretion of the reader to determine. Everything may be true, nothing may be true. I'm Jane.
I'm John.
Act 1, Scene 1. First meet. Jane and John at the bar.
So do you come here often?
Excuse me?
Oh, I said, do you come here often?
No.
Oh. So today is my lucky day.
No, not today. Firsts by Jade Bibi. A note. The truth of each of the events listed below are up to the discretion of the reader to determine. Everything may be true, nothing may be true. I'm Jane.
I'm John.
Act 1, Scene 1. First meet. Jane and John at the bar.
So do you come here often?
Excuse me?
Oh, I said, do you come here often?
No.
Oh. So today is my lucky day.
No, not today. So, do you come here often?
Excuse me?
Can a lady get a drink at this place?
I'm waiting for someone.
Cool. I was just speaking out loud.
I'm married.
Oh, okay.
So do you come here often?
Is that really your opening line?
Excuse me?
I watched you walk all the way from there and wondered what you might say.
No good then, huh?
No good. So what was your second option?
Did it hurt?
When I fell from heaven.
Obviously, I have to work on my pickup lines then.
I'm Jane.
I'm John. Can I get you something to drink?
Sure. I'm Jane.
I'm John. Can I get you something to drink?
No, thank you.
I thought we had some banter going there.
No, sorry, it's just that I'm 6 months sober, that's all.
Okay. Water then?
That would be great.
Right. Strange place to sit if you're a recovering alcoholic, isn't it?
Testing my willpower, I guess.
I see.
I'm Jane.
I'm John. Can I get you something to drink?
That'd be great.
So what brings you to a place like this on a Thursday night?
Well, I'm just trying to get away from humans, you know.
Strange place to sit in if you're trying to get away from humans, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess I'm testing my willpower, I guess.
I see.
I'm Jane.
I'm John. Can I get you something to drink?
Sure.
What's your poison?
I'll have whatever you're having.
Really?
Really? Yes, really.
You sure you can handle it?
Try me.
Okay, double Johnson on the rocks, please.
Oh,
Still not baking out?
no, it's actually my usual drink.
Oh, this is going to be an interesting night.
So, John, what brings you to a place like this on a Friday night?
Evidently you. What?
It's a bit stalkerish, don't you think?
Oh, no. I didn't mean for it to come out that way.
How did you mean for it to come out?
Well,
Well,
I just meant I'm glad I bumped. Okay, I'm glad we bumped into each other.
mostly you came up to me.
Mostly, you watched me come over to you.
So, John, what brings you to a place like this on a Friday night?
Evidently you.
What do you mean?
Well, I'm a firm believer of destiny.
Oh, God, no, you're not one of those.
One of those?
One of those, everything happens for a reason.
Well, I'm afraid. Yes.
Okay, so how about just for tonight, we pretend you're not one of those?
All right. But just for record, I'm glad we bumped into each other.
Mostly you came up to me.
All right. But for the record, I'm glad we bumped into each other.
Me too.
Oh my goodness, I was muted. There we go. Nobody told me. I was just saying that we had the lovely Mxolisi Masilela there of the TX Theatre and Refula Lebetter. They're reading from Jade Bibi's first. Thank you so much to the both of you. So we give thanks to Sim Mxolisi not carrying speakers or lights for once. It's lovely to see him carrying a script and reading from the actor's side. There you go. All right, cool. Can everybody hear me? Great, fantastic. All right, so next we're going to move over to meet our second writer for the evening, Miss Olivia Julia Fisher, who I believe is on the other side of the world right now. Olivia, maybe you can let us know where you're at before you introduce your play. Over to you.
Hi everyone, my name's Olivia Fisher. I just finished my master's in playwriting at the University of Edinburgh. I literally got my marks today. So I'm officially graduated. That's cool. My play Still, I wrote 3 years ago as part of my graduating final piece at University of Cape Town. It was inspired by my rape when I was 19. This is like seriously emotional, but when I was 19, I was raped. And for about 7 months into my therapy, trying to grapple with the rupture in my life, I kept coming back to the same question of what would have happened if I just got the opportunity to kill my rapist, because at the time, that was the only way that I could channel how I was feeling, was that all I could focus on were all different ways that I would want to kill my rapist. And 3 years later, I got the opportunity to write this play, and it became something very different. And it became an interrogation of how sexual assault and sexual harassment and trauma, sexual trauma like that, can create ripples in the rest of your life. And yeah, so that's my play. I hope that you like it.
I'm sure that everybody will, Olivia. And thank you so much for sorting through your history and being brave in that way to open up your heart to all of us. Thank you for writing, to Jade and to you. I think Andre has expressed just a desire to be first so that he doesn't have to be here through the night. So I think maybe we can jump over to Andre, and then we can have Vryfees' second Oscar-winning performance for the night with Still. So Andre, I'll hand it over to you. Just please make sure you unmute, and yeah, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I know that you want me to say that it was strange what she did after it, even all went down. Yes, but I'll listen. Listen, but that's the thing. It wasn't strange. It wasn't. Her relationship with water, it's something that you and I can never begin to imagine, to even try to describe it. It's like I once asked her, like when we were 16 or something, and we were in Durban on holiday together, and she'd do this thing, right, that you would call strange, but it wasn't for her. For us, because she'd do it all the time. She'd lie on the sand on her stomach and would let the waves pull her backwards and forwards, closer and further away from the sea. No, like on her stomach. And I know you're laughing because you think that's not normal, but yeah, it is strange. But I once asked her like why she does it, and she told me that water held her in a way that the earth never could. And isn't that just a beautiful thing? I mean, that she can say that about something that you and I and everyone here, just take for granted. So no, if you're asking if it was strange, her jumping into the pool like that, floating on top of the water like that, no, it wasn't strange, not even a little bit. Well, Chloe, the defendant, she was pretty drunk. Well, yes, intoxicated. Well, she was stumbling and slurring, that type of thing. The last time I saw her before she was in the lounge, sitting on the couch speaking to someone from another school, yes, I would say she was intoxicated. She was speaking really loudly and kept falling off the couch, like the person that she was talking to had to keep picking her up from the floor and just to hold her back to the seat. You know what? I don't feel comfortable talking. Okay, well, I walked up to her to the couch and I offered her the water in a red cup. It was tap water before anyone thinks anything. I suggested she go upstairs to sleep it off and just calm down. I helped her up the stairs and she kept tugging on my shirt, really just falling all over the place. And I put her in the back in the bedroom towards the back of the house. And I thought, I don't know what I thought, but I put her down on the bed, and when I left, she was alone. She passed out, and I put a bucket next to the bed, so if she and I closed the door behind me. She was definitely alone. Yes, she did try and entice me, but I could see that she was like not well. I mean, yes, if you want to put it like that, I do believe she wanted to sleep with someone, but I don't think it was necessarily me. what I mean is that I don't think she really knew who I was. So, I mean, it could have been any one of us. I mean, she could have wanted any of us, you know? Well, I don't know if I could answer that. I don't know what she was thinking. Like I said, she was pretty intoxicated. I mean, if you're asking me if she was sober, and she'd still want to sleep with me, then I don't know. No, she never showed any form of interest before that. And no, that was just a rumor. Some rumor some stupid kid at school started. Well, we were best friends, like forever, as long as I can remember. But I just want to clarify that she never expressed interest in boys. No, not that she wasn't into boys, just not boys like that. But she was really, really. But also, can I just say that if she had done or said, or if she had said no, I would have. If she said stop, I mean, I would have stopped, or I hope I would have.
Sure. Thank you, Andre. Oof. We really, really give thanks to you for making the time to join us today. And yeah, thank you so much for that interpretation. Emil, are we good to go with the next section of this presentation? Absolutely. Emil says we are absolutely good to go. So we're going to head over to the second recorded piece from Still, delivered by Refilwe Lepere. Over to you, Emil.
Still by Olivia Fisher. I am Chloe. Scene 1. An elevated bath sits upstage left, a light illuminating it from the back. The back door opens to reveal the shadow of a woman in the door frame. The woman, a 17-year-old, walks towards the spotlight created downstage center. She begins. Chloe. Chloe Smith. I'm 17 years old. Hyde Park High. I'm doing matric. Yes. No, I don't drink. I swim, so I don't drink. Yes, I was drinking on the night at the party. My swimming team suggested that we go because the next day we're going to have the day off. So I thought it would be fun. Yes, I was drunk. Actually intoxicated, yeah. I remember arriving at the party with Aaron. I remember arriving at the party with Aaron. Oh. I remember arriving at the party with Aaron and then drinking and then the stairs and then I'm sorry. What was the question again? Please repeat it. Oh, okay. I remember drinking, arriving at the party with Aaron, in the lounge, and then in the kitchen, then we went upstairs. No, I went up with Aaron. Aaron left, I think. I'm sorry. I was in the room and then I swam. Yes. I don't know. I just needed to swim. Yes. No. I don't think. Oh, I would remember. I don't think it would have happened. I would remember. I think I would remember if I just needed to swim. Because I just I needed to swim because of the room that I was in. I'm really trying. I'm sorry. I'm trying to remember. I really am trying. Aaron, room, stairs. Aaron, room, stairs, swimming. I don't know. I'm telling you the truth. I'm telling you what I remember, what I know. I just remember needing to swim because I just needed to swim. I just needed to swim. I just needed to swim.
Sure. Yeah. Ooh. Yeah, no. Not easy work to wade through. And just thank you again to Olivia. Thank you again to Jade for penning these works, right? Although different in their makeup, different in what they're trying to aim at, we can already see the thread of relationships and negotiating one's position within a relationship, in one instance from the position of trying to recollect trauma, in another from the position of trying to build something that becomes something. And so I would like to invite now everybody who is watching, after having seen those snippets, and we give thanks to all of the actors who helped us with reading. I would like to invite us to now engage in a conversation. Now, I'm aware that not everybody has read the full plays, but the members of the lab that are here have had the opportunity to go through the work, and so it would be just great to have a conversation with the writers around everything that has inspired this work, and just thank you so much again for offering your work and opening up your hearts in this way. And I would like to invite Vryfees to do her third part of her Oscar-winning work tonight in facilitating this conversation. Just to let everybody know, one of the amazing things that Vryfees does is just the facilitation of conversation. So it's not that I'm tired of talking, but there's someone who's just much better at doing this than I am. So over to you, Vryfees.
Okay, thank you so much, Katlego. You're very kind, and thank you for that introduction and for all of it. Thank you again to POPArt and Vryfees for the opportunity, for the platform. And I'd like to invite Olivia and Jade to come back. And just I guess for me, the big question I have, and I think has been, we live in a time when a lot of us are thinking about really large issues, like the issues are huge in the world, right? And we know, like, today is a big, democracy might be changed for the better, for the worse, depending what happens in America. But there are these really big, large issues that we engage in with the world. And we come from a tradition in South Africa of big issues in plays. But you both have done this wonderful work of taking really important stuff and making it very personal. So I'd like you to maybe just take a moment to just talk about that. How does it, for you, what is that process like of having to take a very big public issue and then writing it into as small, as personal, as everyday, as normal as could be? So maybe just a few words around that.
Do you want to start, Jade, or shall I? Okay. Okay. I think for me, I've always believed that writers are in the business of people. And one of the reasons why I got interested in writing stories about people was because people both enraged me and enchanted me at the same time. And I hear all the time I mean, you brought up America, and I hear all the time from people like, don't bring in politics, don't bring in politics. And it's like, sure, like, I don't know how many different languages I need to say politics are personal for people to get it. Politics exists in every single interaction and every single decision that we make, whether or not we are aware of it. So, and for people to understand politics, and for people to really understand how politics affect the personal, it's about reminding people about empathy and making political more personal. So that's why I say, like, I'm in the business of writing about people, because it's trying to find a way to bring that forward. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Jade?
For me, I was interested in the idea of a universal character, and whether that was something that existed. Because we hear very personal stories about all people. But what happens if this particular character represents everyone? And so this Jane and John Doe came from this idea that if you find a dead body, that person is identified as a Jane or a John Doe. And what if that was you? And so I wanted to write everyone's experience in a way that was personal to whoever you are as a viewer, but also so that Jane had a character and John had a character. And that kind of came as I wrote and listened to people. And like Olivia says, like, you're just writing about people. And so I tried my best to, and I think it's weird that you say it's personal, because I was trying to make it big. Actually, so yeah, I think a lot of this stuff for me personally happens by accident, and also it's what you feel when you read it.
Perhaps, oh, look at me talking with my music. So maybe perhaps then maybe choose to include so that everyone can talk about. Maybe perhaps is to share, because a lot of times, you know, we never think what Katlego started with is around a process of writing. So we always, because for us, especially even I teach theater and stuff, and you realize everyone wants the thing on stage, but we haven't thought about the process of writing. So already, I mean, Olivia, you had shared a bit about where your story comes from, but also just, I mean, even when one has a story, right? You have a story that sits in your heart, that sits in your chest, sits in your world. But was that process for you from heart to, you know, to pen, to then stage? So what is that process like? So maybe speak a bit about that. And then I would like to, after you've spoken, maybe Katlego, because you're also doing a lot of work, you can speak back to your own processes around, so that we can just have a very communal thinking around processes. Because I think a lot of times we always think of writing as such a, I mean, it's an individual thing that happens alone. And writers are these people who anguish over paper and struggle for days trying to release, you know, and some of us who are just actors are not understanding what are the writers going through. I'm joking. But yeah, so please just talk to us about your process, about what happened.
Well, for still, I mentioned that it was part of my final year prac, and I basically started, well, I had a full year-long process of conceptual exercises with my supervisor, Mark Fleischman, at the time. So we would do like very weird things to try and build concept. Like we'd have like object theater, and we had to create this, one of my favorite exercises, we had to bring these objects in and create a story with objects, and it had to be light, touch, sound, taste. And I remember one of the things I always remember, that I put flavored condoms on my hands. And I just always remember that exercise because it was gross, but it was also very interesting. And it kind of gave me how I wanted the audience to feel like in the space. So when I started working with the actors, I said, all I know are these three things. I want to write about sexual assault. I want to write a story about people that have had time to process but aren't over it. And I want to write a murder mystery, but with feeling. And yeah. So, and a lot of that was like writing, setting up improvs, going home, writing a scene from that improv, going back, deciding it doesn't work, change it. And then once I had a first draft, I went back, and that's what was presented. But then second draft was like a whole nother overhaul. And then third draft was another overhaul. And then that was when I was a proper, like sitting in a dark room, sad and miserable. And like, I hate this. Why did I do this? Why didn't I become an accountant? That's my train of thought every time I write the script. I'm like, why didn't I just do accounting? So yeah. And now I'm just now that's just what I do every time. Just wish I was an accountant. It's very great for creativity.
I also sometimes wish I was an accountant. Mine was similar. So I also wrote this for my final year writing piece. But like I say, everything that happens with me is an accident, right? So I was taking physical theater in third year, and then there weren't enough students to continue to fourth year. And they were like, hey, you have to take something else. And I didn't do design, so I only had writing. So I was forced basically to take writing in fourth year, and then had to put out a play. And then this thing happened. And now everybody's like, hey, Jade, you made a cool thing. And I'm like, what? It was by accident. I didn't mean to. And that's honestly how I feel. And I'm so grateful that people think it's cool. And then in the writing, the reason that I wrote how I wrote, because I was very interested in the style. So the fact that there's different vignettes that come over and over again, and that there is a repetition. I read the play Constellations by Nick Payne, and also All in the Timing by David Ives, which has the same kind of style. And I haven't seen that style everywhere, and I haven't seen people interrogate that style. And so for me, for my final year piece, that's what I was doing. I was interrogating the style, and the like story just kind of happened. And then, like Rafiwa was saying, it did become personal, because a lot of the time I would type Jane and then I would type Jade by accident, and then I'd be like, this isn't about me. It's not my real life story. Maybe it is, maybe I'm Jane. So a lot of it also just came from like listening to conversations with other people and listening to other people's relationship issues and what did you fight about and what's happening. And then as it went along, it became an interrogation of gender and what happens if the female goes to war? What happens if the male doesn't have a job? What happens if we change up stuff? And I just wanted to literally put in all the possibilities that I could find. Somebody came up to me, I think it was at the Writers Lab Reading Festival, and said to me, how did you think of all the possibilities? And I was like, I have no idea. Again, everything was an accident. So for me, when I feel like I'm gonna give up and be an accountant, then I just like hope that future Jade will know what to do, because she's just been helping me out. Like, she'll know.
Sure. Yeah. Wow. I don't even want to talk, man. I'm just like I'm enjoying just sitting here and listening to people's different processes. So for me, I've also recently just finished writing something and handed it over as a first draft. And for me, I think process for me it's different. As I've kind of gotten older, it's kind of shifted. At first, I really would lean on I had the luck that directors would often come to me and say, I see this thing, please help me to bring it to life. And so for the most part, I wouldn't have to worry so much about putting things together, or rather finding the story. The story was there, and it was about how do we interpret it? What do we want to actually say with this thing that we're putting together? Then things change when you start having something on your own soul, something that's kind of, burdening you, something that's kind of saying, but I want to speak through you. And I find that to be one of the most scary things ever, because it tends to not leave you alone, and it tends to want to say, look, I know that you're busy with life, I know that you have all these things going on, but there's something that needs to be said through your hands. And so I tend to find myself, once something like this happens, I kind of try to listen for anything that may be coming out from the world. So like with the story that I was doing now, I didn't know what I was going to write about. All I knew is that I'd been commissioned and there was a deadline and there was a due date. And happenstance, I heard a news report that had to do with this girl in Limpopo who was murdered by her boyfriend, and then her boyfriend eventually ended up taking his own life. And as I was reading, as I was sort of following the story down the rabbit hole, I wasn't even focusing on what was happening. And yeah, the best writing happens when you have a due date, right? Because you have to get it out. So like I wasn't even focusing on the TV, and it sort of just struck me as I was listening to the facts of the story. And as I dig deeper, you find that, news outlets have the very surface level details, the who, what, where, when, and why. But Twitter has the meat. So that I go to Twitter and I start searching the names of these people. I start searching the story, and I discover this just web of just like deceit and all of these different things, right? But then something weird happens. And I think I'd like to ask Olivia about the negotiation of things that are based on truth when you're trying to write something that is meant to be staged, right? Because I started to find that when I tried to go with the facts as they were, it's sort of like the story said no, use me as a jump off point to interrogate what is happening in this thing. So then it starts to become something else. The story starts to dictate its own direction, even though you thought you were going to be telling a story about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 says, hey, but you didn't consider these things. Like you're saying, Jade, once you had started interrogating this format, the story starts to generate itself, and it's sort of like you are then now just like a listening in and hoping that whenever you sit down, something will happen, right? And so I sort of try to surrender to that process, but sometimes procrastination, just an imposter syndrome, will just make you sit there and think, but like, what right do I have to be telling these stories? And I think this is why for me a space like the Writers Lab becomes so important, because then I know that I can lean on other people, because I know the internal narrative can be quite demeaning, like it can be self-deprecating, where you end up not even doing the work, right? So leaning on others then helps me to see beyond my own BS, to see beyond my own insecurities, and to see what the actual story is about. So it lays down my kind of, it's about me, and makes it about the story that we're writing. So I'd like to ask that question to you, Olivia, since you're writing from a place of truth. How do you negotiate once you enter into the space, and once you try to put this thing together? How do you make decisions around what to take and what not to take, and where to go with what you find as you unearth things?
I think that it's always different. I find that writing about other people's lives, when it's more like biographical, I tend to do a lot more research, and I spend a lot more time in the research phase than I do in any other phase. And often I have to find an in, so like an in to the story. So because I just fundamentally believe that I could never put myself in someone else's shoes and pretend to live that life. So I try and find like an in. I don't know how best to describe it, but I think was still, because it was my story, I had to find a way, because it came from such a traumatic event, to kind of protect myself. Because I also don't believe that writers can only write from a place of pain. And I think that this whole struggling artist narrative that we've been fed is just a capitalist hoax. And I think that I was like, I'm not going to use my pain to become like pain porn. I'm not interested in that. So I had to find a way to physically and thematically separate myself from the story. And that was my in. So like, it wasn't like Olivia and my rape and how that happened, and how if I went to trial because I killed my rapist would go. I thought, how would everyone else in the situation feel? So I found an in that was very different to what actually happened to me. And I think that that's half the battle when it comes to fighting things like imposter syndrome, having those ethical conversations with yourself, like, do I have the right to tell the story? It's like finding that in is so important because your position never changes. Yeah, so that's how I found it. And that's how I find writing.
I think that's quite interesting because part of what also, I think the bigger conversation we must be having right now in the midst of this moment that we're having of the loss of, you know, what we're losing, the reality of being in each other's presence, the reality of creating together. And I'm really interested in that how do you I mean, so for example, I'm a kind of writer who is embodied. I'm an embodied writer. So I read in very embodied ways. I even have a podcast called Embodied Reading. So I believe in embodiment. So I'm just wondering then, and also as a writing concept, I write in very embodied ways. So I have to get into a rehearsal room, work with actors, then come out and then write again. And then, so perhaps maybe to think about this moment and how this moment, what does it allow? What does it offer? What are the opportunities that it's offering in terms of writing? Of course, it's giving us isolation. Then you can be a solo playwright, and that concept of this solo playwright who rises and writes, it gives us that. But what are the other opportunities that it offers? But then also, what are the moments of loss? I think in terms of the context that we're in, especially in South Africa and creating new writings, as we want to be part of those people who are creating new works, new writings, new published works. What is this moment offering for you in terms of your own writing and in terms of your own kind of creation? I liked what Jade was saying. Say, I was within and without, simultaneously enchanted and repelled by the inexhaustible variety of life. Woo! Yes, Jesus, right? So what is this moment within and without, simultaneously exhausted and enchanted and repelled in this moment, with loss and gain and all of that we're getting? What does it mean for writing?
I'll start by saying that it's not my words. That's F. Scott Fitzgerald. It's from The Great Gatsby. It's one of my favorite quotes. And it perfectly tells us exactly how all of us are feeling, like we're here, but we're not here. For me, on the plus side, and this is a personal thing, like it's connected us to people that are very far away. And made them feel close, because we see everybody through the Zoom screen, but you know, if you are far away like Olivia, or if you are close like Vryfees, like now we just all feel like we're in the same place, which I think is amazing. And I think it also allows us to then get that feedback from far away. So one of the other things that I did, because me being a person that I was like, I need to have a job, so I just send my CV and my things everywhere. And so there was this thing happening with writing with Acetage. And so they had a mentorship program where they had people from Chicago mentor young writers and to help them expand on their plays. That's something that never ever would have happened if we didn't have this like Zoom interface, you know? And I think that's really remarkable. But then, just like you say, Vryfees, if I could get into the theater and play, that's what we want to do, right? I wrote first specifically with very little stage direction. I don't know if you noticed. I wanted it to be for the director to play. I wanted it to be like a challenge for the actors to be like, how actually must this thing happen? How are you going to know that it's a different scene, or that it's a different beat, or that it's a different vignette or whatever? And you can't do that just by reading it. And I wanted to see what would happen. And I wrote it as a director a little bit because that's the frame that I knew. So not being able to play and to see it, that's quite sad, but it's really nice that through this opportunity, I've been able to see so many renditions of it. And so that's also like a little bit of a positive side.
I'll talk about COVID. I actually sent Katlego an email when we found out that we were getting, well, when I found out I was getting published as part of the series. And I was like, I was staying in Durban because I was home for that week, and I was sitting in Durban and I was like, just like dwelling in the loss, because if I didn't have my master's to finish, I would have written nothing. I have felt so divorced from humanity, particularly when I was in Edinburgh and I was seeing like what was happening in America, Black Lives Matter, am I next? And I was just like, yeah, I was trying to explain to my thesis supervisor at the time the kind of grief that South African women live with every day, and how I didn't know how to manage that grief because I was so far away, and I didn't know what to say or do, and I didn't know how to speak to people, and you know, I just miss touching people. I miss touching people, and I miss feeling people's energies, and I miss the room. I miss a room, any room. I'll take any room. I'll take a public bathroom. I don't care. It's, yeah. So, and I was saying to like a couple of my parents' friends have turned around and said, oh, but this must be a great time to write. All you have to do is time. All you have is time to write. And I'm like, yeah, but I sit at home and I stare at a blank page and I try and come up with memories of conversations I could have heard. And all I want to do is sit in a cafe in the middle of a neighborhood I've never been to before, have a cup of coffee and just listen. Like, just listen. That is my favorite thing to do, and always has been since I was 10. And I don't get to do that anymore. So I don't write anymore. I wrote my dissertation play, which was quite nice, if I think so. But I was like writing about something in that moment of loss, of intimacy. So it was easy for me. Now I don't know what to do. Now I'm like, oh, I got no cafe. I got no couple fighting next to me. I got no lecturers sitting in front of me with their students. It's like, where do I get my inspo? Then just only go so far.
Sure, I resonate so much with what Olivia is saying, man. Like, ish. First of all, how do you make it quiet in here? So that's been my challenge. Like, yes, there's isolation. Yes, you're in a space where things are seemingly quiet, but hang on, there's a whole virus, turning the world upside down. So like moving beyond that anxiety of just feeling what that's doing, and then trying to turn that into some kind of creative output. That's been the challenge for me. And just like even reading something, I find that my attention span it's not what it used to be. Like I'll start reading something, but I become so disinterested so quickly that it's just like, it feels like there's no sense of stakes anymore. It feels like, a lot of the things that were drivers, things that were, even deadlines now don't do it as good as they used to. Like, like I can watch that date coming and just be like, so like, just that feeling of being overwhelmed. But I think maybe there's also something to be said about the ability to tune in when something then does catch you. Like Olivia saying with the dissertation, and I'd love for some of that energy to rub off on me, because I'm not seeing clear in my own study right now. But just having I mean, when I'm sitting down trying to figure out what the story is and I hear a news bulletin, that then sparks my interest. So I'm grateful that that faculty within oneself has not gone completely, hasn't been bludgeoned completely, but I've been struggling to just like be inspired enough to just get creative outputs done. And I think that's just been the thing. I agree that also, like, in this distancing, there's also been a closeness, right? But, you know, with this kind of closeness comes a different kind of tiredness also. So, you know, just, you know, deciding how much you want to engage in this kind of way, how much of it is healthy for you, how much of it is, you know, tedious classes and meetings that you don't want to really be a part of, and like, you know, everything having to happen through this kind of interface has been a challenge of its own, but at least it's allowed us to still have some kind of engagement with others. I think just to wrap it off, you know, this idea that, you know, we start with observation, you know, we start with looking and listening. And if we don't have those spaces where we can just sit and be creepy and watch people while they go about life, you know, for me at least, it becomes a little bit challenging to find, you know, those ins, as Olivia was saying. So finding that in, for me, it's really about people and looking at people as they move through the world, you know. So in as much as isolation is great, it would be great if there wasn't a pandemic ravaging the world. Then it would feel like a writing retreat as opposed to imposed isolation. Yeah.
I have to say that I haven't heard anyone say it quite like Vryfees said it tonight about we're dealing with large issues. I've had like so many feelings in me, and like everything, I feel small, and that's like why a deadline doesn't really matter, because like shit is going on. The world is like got big things. And it was just so beautiful tonight to also just like zero in onto a story, to understand that like one person's experience and relationship is so key to what keeps us going. So I'm so affected by that. And also just to have that articulation of large issues and understanding that, and then where what we do fits into that is really beautiful. So thank you, everybody.
Yeah, and thank you so much for sharing. I think, and Olivia, yes, thank you for sharing that. I think also definitely sitting with that loss and having to have had COVID. I mean, I can't imagine what it must have felt like. But I think it's a very hard and difficult moment to conceptualize. How do we then, I think when it started in March, everyone was sharing that Shakespeare created King Lear, wrote to King Lear. Where's your King Lear? We're all having too much pressure.
And King Lear is not even that good of a play, okay? It's not even like, that's what kills me. Not even
Where's
that
your
good.
King Lear? So I think there's a lot of pressure of King Learing. But I want to remind us of, there was a very, what's that beautiful poem that was also shared at the same time around, what is it called? Oh, but it has something about the animal of the something animal something, but that animal gets comforted. And the point of it was that it's about comfort. I believe in comfort. So missing deadlines, I'm that person. But I think part of what I want to say as a way of closing and thinking about new writing and new ways that we're thinking about new writing in South Africa, I think a lot of times when we've created work, and I know I've been intimidated about creating new work, because the kind of things I've always wondered was, is it political enough? Is it strong? Is it what the people are wanting? Do the people want this? Are you strong enough? Can you make it up? Are you Beyonce or that other chick? You know. So and perhaps it's not just the syndrome. What's that syndrome that you talked about, Katla, for the
Imposter.
Yeah, it's not just the imposter syndrome, but it's the current moment. What does the world require? What are you able to give and stuff like that? So I think as a way of just closing for us, and it will then lead us into a nice moment where Katla can then talk about where else we're going to go with this and what we're trying to do in the Writers Lab in the next moments for us. I want us to maybe perhaps to think about disruption and the idea of the word, when we think of protest and we think of COVID itself, and when we're doing protesting, and protest theater in South Africa was always an idea around disrupting something, but also disrupting. So this idea of COVID having disrupted our lives and all of these kinds of concepts of disruption, but perhaps to think about what are we disrupting as new writers, because as I say, it's not just about the imposter syndrome, but it's this fear that I am disrupting a norm and I'm not looking like what is out there, or I'm not looking like what could be 10 years from now when we look back. Is this the work that we want to see as representative of our time, as our people, all of that? And I think perhaps maybe I'm using the word disruption because perhaps that's what I think my work does. It doesn't necessarily work within the mode that everything is working in. So perhaps I'm asking you to think a bit about, and I think it would be lovely also to hear from POPArt, because you're also doing very interesting work around independent work and reimagining theater in very interesting ways. So to think maybe a moment just for us to think about that process of disruption, and disruption as an act of, yeah, impossibilities and interesting things. Yeah.
This idea of protest online, it was one of the strange things that happened, the strange like reconciliations that one had to do in the beginning. Was like this idea of like, there's so much going on in the world and there's so many things that I want to get involved in, want to speak about, and then this like idea of like, I've always been like very afraid of being a keyboard warrior, or like I always like say like awareness isn't action. So like you can't just share a Facebook post and then like somehow you're now in the position of like really having only the chance to share a Facebook post while you figure out like, how do you disrupt? So I think one of the things that's really interesting me at the moment, and one of the projects that we have coming up as POPArt for My Body, My Space, is this idea of exploring protest online. And yeah, I think just in terms of, it's kind of weird because we had disrupted our status quo, like just before the lockdown. We decided we were going to close the space, we were going to move somewhere else, and we were going to take a little bit of a break. And now it's been like backpedaling into like, okay, how can we like make structure and platform and program? So we've been like a little bit like trying to settle the waves, and I hope that now I'm starting to feel that the waves are settled, that like we can actually use platforms to create, like, I think we've set a foundation for more disruption. So it's like, it's kind of weird thing to go like, what do we need in place so that we can like explode? And I think what the online space does offer is this idea, when I think about protesting online, like it is so amplified, like the amplification, like Jade was saying earlier, we can be anywhere, our communities are so much bigger. Like, what do we do with that? Like, what's exciting about that? Yeah, so these are very much meditations on disruption.
I think for me, the word disruption is such a good word. I've always loved that word. I think in terms of my writing, I only know, I think if I remember when I was thinking I want to make political work when I was in high school. I was like, I want to make political work. I sat down and tried to think about what political work is. I was like, oh no, this is too big for me. I simply do not have it in me to take all of that on. And if I can't think big, like, how do I think small about who I am as a writer, who I am as a person, who am I? That is a big thing, right? And so that thing, and what for myself, because I wrote a series of sentences of what status quo, what we see in theaters, what we see on stage.
I think you're cutting Olivia, so we didn't get much of what you said. Yeah, because I was like, is it my internet? My internet is very problematic.
And I was like, and so one of my movies is old, but
She's gone.
my internet.
Are you back? Ow.
I think we've lost her.
We lost Olivia. Okay, so quickly, Katlego, Jade, and then we'll catch up with her around what she was thinking.
I'll let Jade go first.
No pressure. I have two thoughts. So my first thought was I very firmly believe that if you're not uncomfortable, you're not learning something. And so in the same disruption idea, I think we needed to be disrupted to get to a new point. And then my other thought is that we have been so, and I can't not bring it back to the theater. So like we've been so attached to our screens that in some kind of way, our disruption will be like a travel back in time thing, where like we want to go to the theater, we want to go see people, we want to get away from our screens. And I'm hoping that's what's going to happen, and that disruption or this disruption leads us to come back to the love that is our whole lives, you know, that you find that engagement with the audience and with the people and with the person that's telling you their story, and that in just doing that, something is disrupted because we haven't been doing that. And so that we kind of like, I'm getting goosies, we kind of like come home, you know, and I think that even if it's a little baby disruption, it's big enough for us to like be able to share our story.
Very quickly, I just want to say, like, tonight, listening to this for one of the first times in months, I was like, oh, I want to watch, I want to have a theater again. I want to have a theater again so we can make that show. So it's taken a while, but it's definitely, it's where the heart is.
I totally feel you, Hayley, because yesterday, when we were recording the other day, I kept on, I mean, Khaleesi kept on saying, Fifi, you are so dramatic. I'm like, guys, I want to act. And it was just like, I want to be in theater. I want to be with everybody. I want to hear words. I want to be in the black space. And that was, yeah. So that was also, I feel you about that I want to be with, can we, yes, time travel and disrupt that.
Yeah, I totally agree. We're working on shooting. I don't know if I'm allowed to say whatever. We're filming Little Red Riding Hood and the Big Bad Metaphors, which we did last year. And yesterday we had our first interaction together. And I think more than anything, everyone was just happy to be in a space with other people. And I think, you know, I'm glad that is what is happening, because I think, like Jade was saying, you know, we needed some kind of disruption to take us out of the ways in which we were thinking about the world. Like, you know, the fact that, you know, we couldn't have a conversation with someone who's in Spain. Why not? I mean, we can, these technologies have been there all along, right? So how do we take what we already have at our disposal and think differently around it? So I think I was getting tired of like seeing the same kind of work in the theater. And I think something that this could offer is that we've been forced to think differently about how we're making the work that we're making. And my hope is that, you know, we'll take some of that energy into making new things, making in new ways, and thinking about how we can reach a greater amount of people with the work that we do. I mean, ever since the lockdown began, we've, you know, whatever theater work that we've been watching, most of us have been going to the National Theatre's archive, and, you know, to see how they've been approaching, you know, the idea of, you know, keeping works alive, you know, it's been very liberating in that sense. So I'm hoping that we have seen, and we will also try to be innovative. You know, I hope that our own major, you know, receiving houses don't just copy and mimic what they're seeing abroad, but that will start to be a little bit innovative, and we'll make offers that are going to shift kind of the ground that we've been standing on. And then in terms of the disruption question, I think what struck me, I think, Refilwe, you said this, you know, moving on the basis of what the world needs. You know, there was that whole hurrah when, you know, the essential services were announced, and artists were just like, but the president never speaks about the arts and all of this. And, you know, one finds a tendency to be kind of self-indulgent in how we look at our position in the world. And I think if we could disrupt our own thinking in terms of how can we be in service of others, I think this is a question that I've been trying to think about. You know, like, you know, if our skill sets are going to be utilized, I think it is going to be through collaboration. It's going to be through collaborations just like these. It's going to be through collaborations with corporates, right? Something that maybe we've been looking down on in terms of applied theater. Maybe it's just about how do we then take that format and revolutionize it to, you know, the artistic sensibilities that we would like to see it, you know, encapsulating. So I'm really excited about like how new collaborations are going to be informed by this moment, how people who generally may not have sat together in the same room are now being forced to have conversations with each other. And I hope that as a result, our industry also will find a way to kind of start speaking to each other within, you know, as opposed to the silos of we're doing that and we're doing that. We have our own YouTube channel. Yeah, I think all of that is just, it's just noise. And I think we need disruption that is going to cut against that and create some kind of forward motion that has us speaking in a language of, no, I don't want to say development, but of growth from where we've been. So I really love to see that happening. Yeah.
So true. I think this is a great start, and it's a great way to start thinking about where we're going. I'm very excited about the anthology that's going to come out and how we've really conceptualized it. It's been a while since last year, so we're very excited about it. Yeah, we're going to give you just a chance just to speak back to what we were talking about earlier around disruption. And then once you're done, I'm done, Katlego and Hailey, I'm done with my facilitation. Thank you so much. And it's so wonderful to have really facilitated this moment. But really, Olivia, just let us know what is for you. How has disruption, and what are you disrupting? Because Katlego wants to disrupt all these other people.
I'm so sorry. Just see why I don't like COVID and why I just want to be in a room, because that would never happen in a room. I actually have no idea what I was trying to get at in terms of disruption. I just know that there's lots that needs to be changed, and I don't know necessarily how to do it, but I just want to be an active member in that process, and get out of other people's way when needs be. And I guess the only other thing I can say is that it's all, for me, comes down to your ethics and your practice of ethics and how that manifests itself. I literally, the E word's my favorite word in the dictionary. So I say it all the time. And I always go back to what is ethical for me, what is ethical for my community, and what is ethical within my interpersonal relationships. And that for me breeds into what are people's boundaries and where is it appropriate to push and pull. So, and I think that treating other people like human beings is unfortunately one of the most political things that you can do, because we live in a society that doesn't even do that. So yeah, that's how I feel. Disrupt.
I see we have a question here from Amy Sue Lithgow. I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Amy Sue from YouTube. She's asking, what lies ahead for these plays, and what more can we look forward to in terms of these young playwrights and their works, right? So as we have said, we are putting these plays into an anthology, and we are currently in the process of actually putting it together with our publishing partner, Die Artskonageng. And we are going to be making all of the announcements in terms of where you can start pre-ordering the copy of the book for yourself. Again, it is still by Olivia Fisher. It is first by Jade Bibi. It is The Way to a Man's Heart by Refilwe Lebere. And then it is Zips and Scissors by Kucho Green. So we've seen snippets of 2 of the plays, but we're going to have more full length and more in-depth discussions, you know, in this play playwriting series, this play reading series in collaboration with the POPArt. So, we are indebted to the POPArt because, you've given us an opportunity to not have to worry about the technicalities of doing all of this and just getting the creatives into the space so that we can just do the work of reading and reflecting on the work. So please do keep your eye on the POPArt pages. Do follow the Writers Lab on Instagram, on Facebook, and we will constantly be updating you about what's coming up next. Our next event should be in about 3 weeks, but we'll confirm this, and this will be a continuation of the play reading series. In terms of what the writers are doing, you can follow them on Instagram as well. You can follow them on Facebook as well, just so that you can, keep in the loop of what they're doing. Jade Bibi is Jade Beebs at Jade Beebs, and Olivia is at Olivia Julia Fisher. And just, they're just amazing. And I think it's just an honor to sit in your presence and to work through, the work that you have put on offer. Just to give everybody a sense of where we are going to next as the Writers Lab. As I've said, we're going to have the more extended readings, including the works by Vryfees and by Kucho. And then the next phase is the published book, right? So a great deal of our efforts are looking at this. And we're actually still in the process of raising some funding. We've secured the funding that gets the book into print, but we're trying to amp up the numbers that we're going to be publishing. So please keep an eye on our pages and see how you can also donate to that drive. As you can see, this work is so necessary. I mean, we've spent an hour and a half just discussing short snippets from each of these plays. So you can already see that, there's something here. So please do follow us and support us as we raise more funds. And then as the Writers Lab, we like hosting workshops and writing days where people can come together. And usually we would have done this in a designated space, but now we're thinking about how we can do this online. And hint, POPArt, I'm just saying that this could be something else that we could, start thinking about and talking about in collaboration, because I think that this is a lovely kind of way to keep the spirit of the lab going and to also see how the POPArt can move into these disruptive spaces more intensively. And then we also have more podcasts coming up. We have more writing competitions coming up. And yeah, we just have more collaborations. We're just excited about keeping the spirit of the lab alive and making sure that writers have a home, that writers have a space where they can go and fail and learn and find themselves, find their own voices, find their works, and allow the works to speak for themselves. So, I think that's as good a point as any to stop. I just like to thank each and every person that has made the time to join us today. Thank you, POPArt. Thank you, TX. Thank you to Vryfees. Thank you, Jade. Thank you, Olivia. Thank you, Emil. Thank you, the Writers Lab. Thank you, everybody. It has been absolutely amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.